Over 100 years ago, there was a company that completely revolutionized how human beings shopped. They had a massive distribution network that could deliver practically anything to your front door. They had a catalog that contained hundreds of pages of products from clothing to musical instruments to entire houses. You could browse the catalog, place an order through the mail, and the items would arrive via the railroad system. If this sounds exactly like Amazon, that is because it is. But this company did it a full century before the internet was even invented. The company was Sears, Roebuck and Company. For decades, Sears was the undisputed titan of American retail. They anchored every major shopping mall in the country. They created their own massive exclusive brands like Craftsman Tools and Kenmore Appliances. At their absolute peak, an astonishing 1% of the entire gross domestic product of the United States was spent inside a Sears store. They were so wealthy they built the tallest skyscraper in the world just to house their corporate employees. But today, the mighty Sears empire is completely dead. The company filed for bankruptcy, the massive stores were abandoned, and tens of thousands of dedicated employees lost their pensions. How does the original everything store survive 2 world wars and the Great Depression, only to be completely wiped out in the 21st century? The answer is shocking. Sears was not killed by Amazon or the internet. Sears was slowly and deliberately dismantled from the inside by a Wall Street billionaire who treated the company like a personal piggy bank. This is the story of how toxic financial engineering and a bizarre corporate civil war destroyed the greatest retailer in American history. To understand the tragic fall of Sears, you first must understand how brilliant their foundation truly was. In the late 1800s, America was a rapidly expanding nation of farmers and rural workers. If you lived in a small town, you had to buy all of your goods from the local general store. The owner of the general store had a total monopoly and could charge insanely high prices for basic goods. A railroad station agent named Richard Sears saw a massive opportunity to break this monopoly. He started selling watches through the mail using the railroad system for delivery. He partnered with a watchmaker named Alva Roebuck, and they quickly realized they could sell far more than just watches. In 1894, they released the very first massive Sears Roebuck catalog. It was over 500 pages long, and it changed the world. It was the internet before the internet. A farmer in the middle of nowhere could suddenly open this massive book and buy thousands of items at factory direct prices. You could buy sewing machines, bicycles, firearms, groceries, and medicine. You could literally buy a kit to build an entire house. Sears would pack thousands of pieces of pre-cut lumber, nails, and instruction manuals onto a train car and ship you an entire home. Over 70,000 families built their houses using Sears kits. The catalog was so successful that they built a massive distribution facility in Chicago just to handle the millions of mail orders. Henry Ford, the legendary creator of the automobile, visited the Sears distribution center to learn how to make his own assembly lines more efficient. Sears was the ultimate technology and logistics company of the 19th century. But the world was changing, and the executives at Sears knew they had to evolve. In the 1920s, a new invention started to change the landscape of America: the automobile. Suddenly, rural families did not have to rely on the mail to get their goods. They could drive into the city and shop at physical stores. A brilliant executive named Robert Wood took over Sears and made a massive pivot. He decided that Sears needed to transition from a catalog company into a physical retail empire. He started building massive department stores, but he did not build them in the crowded downtown city centers. He built them on the edges of the cities where land was cheap, and he surrounded the stores with massive free parking lots. This strategy perfectly anticipated the rise of the American suburb. As families moved out of the cities and bought cars, Sears was waiting for them right down the street. And Sears did not just sell other people's products. They invented their own exclusive brands that became legendary for their high quality. They launched Craftsman for tools. They launched Kenmore for kitchen appliances. They launched Die-Hard for car batteries. These brands became so deeply trusted that generations of Americans refused to buy their tools from anywhere else. But Sears did not stop at retail. They realized that people needed insurance for their new automobiles. So Sears started the Allstate Insurance Company. They realized people needed a new way to buy appliances on credit, so Sears launched the Discover Financial Credit Card. They were a retail company, an insurance company, and a bank all rolled into one unstoppable juggernaut. By the 1970s, Sears was at the absolute peak of its power. They were the largest retailer in the world by a massive margin. They employed over 350,000 people. To celebrate their dominance, they built the Sears Tower in Chicago. It was a towering black monolith that stood 110 stories high, making it the tallest building in the entire world. It was the ultimate symbol of corporate invincibility. But invincibility is a dangerous illusion in the business world. While the executives were sitting in their massive skyscraper looking down on the city, they failed to notice the new threats emerging on the horizon. In 1962, 3 new retail companies were founded that would eventually change everything: Walmart, Target, and Kmart. For decades, Sears completely ignored these discount retailers. They thought Walmart was just a cheap store for lower-income families. Sears believed their customers would always stay loyal to the Craftsman and Kenmore brands. But Walmart was building a terrifyingly efficient global supply chain. They used computers to track inventory in real time, and they drove their prices down to absolute rock bottom. By the 1990s, Walmart officially surpassed Sears to become the largest retailer in America. Sears was suddenly bloated and slow. Their stores were starting to look outdated and their prices were too high. They tried to launch a few new marketing campaigns, but the retail magic was slowly fading. The company was bleeding cash and losing market share every single quarter. And just when things looked incredibly bleak, a mysterious billionaire arrived, promising to save the company. Eddie Lampert was not a retail executive. He was a brilliant, ruthless hedge fund manager from Wall Street. He made his fortune by buying distressed companies, stripping away their assets, and making massive profits for his investors. He was obsessed with financial engineering. In 2003, another giant retailer, Kmart, filed for bankruptcy. Eddie Lampert bought the massive debt of Kmart for pennies on the dollar and took total control of the company. He closed hundreds of Kmart stores, sold off the valuable real estate, and magically made a fortune for his hedge fund. Wall Street hailed him as a genius. They called him the next Warren Buffett. Eddie Lampert felt completely invincible. So in 2005, he orchestrated one of the most bizarre corporate mergers in history. He used Kmart to purchase Sears for $11 billion. He combined two struggling retail dinosaurs into one massive corporation called Sears Holdings. He promised the media and the investors that he was going to turn Sears into a modern digital powerhouse. He said he was going to combine the purchasing power of the two companies and crush Walmart and Target. But Eddie Lampert had a very strange philosophy about how a business should be run. He was a devoted follower of the controversial philosopher Ayn Rand. He believed that extreme selfishness and intense competition were the only ways to achieve greatness, and he decided to force this toxic philosophy onto the employees of Sears. Most normal companies operate as a single, unified team. The marketing department, the appliance department, and the clothing department all work together to make the entire store successful. Eddie Lampert thought this traditional structure was a socialist weakness. He believed that if different departments were forced to fight each other for survival, it would make the company more profitable. So he split Sears into more than 30 separate autonomous business units. The apparel division, the electronics division, the tools division, and the human resources division were all turned into independent competing companies. He told each division they had to generate their own profits independently. The results were absolutely catastrophic. It created a literal corporate civil war inside the Sears headquarters. If the appliance division wanted to run an advertisement in the Sunday newspaper, they had to legally pay the Sears marketing division out of their own budget. If the tools division wanted to put Craftsman wrenches in the front window of the store, the apparel division would outbid them and put mannequins there instead. The executives of the different divisions started hiding information from each other. They stopped collaborating on massive sales events. During one Christmas season, the electronics division refused to discount televisions to help drive foot traffic to the clothing department, because it would hurt their own individual profit margin. The customer experience became completely disjointed and confusing. Instead of fighting Walmart and Amazon, the employees of Sears were spending all their energy fighting each other. It was a management disaster of epic proportions. But Eddie Lampert did not care about the stores. He only cared about the real estate. While the executives were fighting in the boardroom, the physical stores were completely falling apart. Eddie Lampert managed the entire company from a luxury estate in Florida. He rarely visited the actual retail stores. He refused to spend any money on maintenance or store improvements. When store managers begged for money to fix leaking roofs or broken automatic doors, he told them no. He told them that spending money on physical stores was a waste of capital in the digital age. The stores became depressing places to shop. The carpets were stained, the ceilings were crumbling, and the shelves were half empty. Customers walked into Sears and felt like they had traveled back in time to a depressing Soviet grocery store. Eddie Lampert claimed he was saving all the money to invest in a massive digital loyalty program called Shop Your Way. Shop Your Way was supposed to be his answer to Amazon Prime. It was a complicated points system that confused the cashiers and frustrated the customers. It was a massive digital failure. But starving the stores of cash was actually part of Eddie Lampert's grand strategy. He knew that the retail business of selling washing machines and jeans was dying, but he also knew that Sears owned some of the most valuable commercial real estate in the entire country. He realized that the land underneath the stores was worth significantly more than the stores themselves, and he was about to execute a masterclass in corporate extraction. In 2015, Eddie Lampert engineered a brilliant and controversial financial transaction. He created a brand new, completely separate real estate company called Seritage Growth Properties. Then he took 235 of the best, most profitable Sears store properties and sold them to this new company. But Eddie Lampert was a major shareholder in both companies. He basically sold the best real estate to himself. Once Seritage owned the buildings, they legally forced the failing Sears stores to pay them massive amounts of rent just to stay open. Sears was suddenly paying hundreds of millions of dollars in new rental expenses while their sales were plummeting. When a Sears store inevitably failed to make a profit, Seritage would evict them. Then Seritage would take the massive building, slice it up into smaller pieces, and rent it out to successful companies like Whole Foods or fitness centers at much higher rental rates. Eddie Lampert was personally making a fortune as a real estate landlord, while the retail company he was supposed to be saving was bleeding to death. He was strip mining the corporation. When the company ran completely out of cash, he started selling off the legendary crown jewels. He sold the famous Craftsman Tools brand to Stanley Black & Decker for $900 million. He tried to sell the Kenmore brand and the Die Hard brand. He was selling the furniture to pay the rent on a burning house. Wall Street analysts watched in horror as the greatest retail empire in American history was carved up and sold for parts. By 2018, the brutal mathematics finally caught up to Eddie Lampert. Sears had not posted a profitable year in nearly a decade. They were burning through hundreds of millions of dollars every single quarter. The suppliers and the vendors refused to ship inventory to the stores because they were terrified they would never get paid. Without new inventory, the holiday shopping season was guaranteed to be a complete failure. On October 15, 2018, the 125-year-old company officially filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. It was a monumental tragedy for the American workforce. Tens of thousands of loyal Sears employees lost their jobs immediately. Many of them lost their severance packages and saw their retirement benefits completely gutted in the bankruptcy courts. The massive department stores that had anchored the American suburbs for generations were locked up and abandoned. But incredibly, Eddie Lampert was not finished. During the bankruptcy proceedings, he used his hedge fund to buy the remaining ashes of the company back from the bankruptcy court. He promised to keep a few hundred stores open and save thousands of jobs. But it was just a temporary delay of the inevitable execution. Over the next few years, he continued to slowly close the remaining stores and sell off the inventory. The slow death march continued until almost nothing was left. Today, the Sears brand is practically extinct. Out of the thousands of massive department stores that once dominated the landscape, only a tiny handful remain open in the United States. They are ghost towns. The Sears Tower in Chicago was renamed the Willis Tower years ago. The magnificent catalog that taught the nation how to shop from home is a forgotten antique. Eddie Lampert remains a billionaire living in a massive estate in Florida. He walked away from the wreckage perfectly fine while the working-class employees were left holding the empty bag. The company that basically invented the modern supply chain was ultimately destroyed by the very financial system it helped to build. The spectacular destruction of Sears is a masterclass in toxic management and Wall Street greed. Here are the 3 lessons from their tragic bankruptcy. Lesson 1. Internal competition destroys collaboration. Eddie Lampert thought that applying extreme capitalism to his own internal departments would make them stronger. Instead, it created a toxic culture of sabotage. A retail store is an ecosystem. If the marketing team and the sales team view each other as enemies, the customer is the one who suffers. Great companies conquer their competitors by fighting together as a unified front. If you fight a civil war inside your own walls, you will always lose the external war. Lesson 2. Financial engineering cannot fix a broken product. Hedge fund managers believe that spreadsheets can solve any problem. Eddie Lampert spent his entire tenure moving real estate assets, restructuring debt, and spinning off brands. But he fundamentally forgot that retail is about selling products to human beings. If your store is dirty, your employees are unhappy, and your shelves are empty, no amount of financial magic will save you. You cannot cut your way to growth. You must invest in the customer experience. Lesson 3. A brand is a promise you have to keep. For a century, the name Sears was a promise of absolute quality. When a farmer bought a Craftsman wrench, he knew it would last a lifetime. But when the company started starving the stores of cash and selling off the legendary brands, they broke that fundamental promise. They assumed the customers would just keep shopping there out of blind loyalty. But loyalty is earned every single day. When Sears stopped respecting their customers, the customers simply walked out the door and opened their laptops to shop on Amazon. The original everything store was completely destroyed by a failure to remember what made them great in the first place.